Unfolding futures, causal stories, and systemic models that map tomorrow. Yes, I've changed the name of the Substack one more time, trying to figure out how to get the name of the Substack to align with the content, and it's likely to change again. But there's a certain aspect of this Substack that's I think is completely non-obvious, and I thought I would go ahead and cover that. And it has to do with the evolution of the models for the individuals who drop in to look at stuff, or the free subscribers. They have access to a version of a model that provides a story with a description of the way that you would alter that story for different stakeholders for that context, and a podcast that's usually 3.5 to 4.5 minutes long, that's actually a story or a depiction of that story developed by Gemini talking between two individuals. The paid subscriber for $5 a month gets a more comprehensive analysis of that particular model, so that the document explains the model, wisdom, leverage points, knowledge, archetypes, principles, insights, future implications, and access to the source itself. And what the source is the images that I used in the creation of the two posts, a text version of the story itself, the MP3 version of the podcast, and the HTML file that represents the model itself. Now, you can't just click and open this. You have to right-click on it and download it. But when you download it and then open it, you actually get the model itself. And when you're looking at the model, you'll notice that every one of the elements and every one of the connections is documented, along with an indication of how you would go about measuring it if you decided you wanted to do that. The relationships also have a estimate of the interaction time for the relationship, and the thicker the relationship, the stronger it is. Now, the thing is, this is what's there at the moment, but you're not limited to that, because if you go to Gemini and you go to Canvas, make sure you're using Pro, 2.5 Pro, and then you upload that HTML file itself, and then you ask it something like, what additional actions might mitigate greenhouse gas concentration, which was one of the elements on the model. You can go ahead and ask it that, and it will look at that HTML file, look at the relationships in it, and come up with an approach or additional things that you might do to mitigate greenhouse gas. Now, if you're just asking it about the model, it usually doesn't take it very long to give you some kind of an indication of things that you might do. All right. Though, if you ask it to if you then say, well, okay, add all of those dimensions to the model, it may take it 3 to 5 minutes to actually figure out how to redraw the model, because it's got to write a couple of thousand lines of code. And once it does that, you then have an evolved version of the model with the elements and the relationships, with notes on them, and you can save that new version of it, and you would call it something else, so that it was version 2. And because it takes 3 to 5 minutes, because it's got a lot to do, I don't usually wait for it. I might be working on 2 or 3 different models at the same time. I might be doing something else completely unattached to this, and just let it run in the background and go check on it later. So you can continue to ask it questions about that set of relationships and evolve the model itself, though realize that sometimes it makes mistakes. If you look at this closely, you'll notice that it missed a couple of loops that it should have identified. And you can just go in and say, I think you missed a couple of loops, and it'll go back and reevaluate the situation and usually identify the loops. And you can move all these pieces around to wherever they're most appropriate for what the loops that they represent. So that's the part of this that I think is not obvious. The access to the models gives you a baseline for continuing to evolve that set of relationships in that context based upon your interest. So I thought that I should surface this. So take care. Bye.